Welcome back in, everybody, to a Friday edition of Birds 365, joined now by our weekly Friday guest, Paul Domowitch. Domo, how you doing on this Friday, man?
Doing well, guys. How about you?
Good to see you, Damo. Hope you had a happy 4th. A little bit of a respite from the grind that seems to be 365. That's why we call it Birds 365. We're constantly talking about this team, but it does get to be a chore in this little dead period, I admit, Damo.
Yes.
Now we're getting close. Anything change from you in the perspective of what you want to see out of this team in training camp? I'm kind of like debating between, is it just about, the mechanics of getting this offense installed, or is it more about figuring out, is this a legitimate contender?
No, I mean, I think they just need to give Jalen and the rest of the key guys a lot of training camp reps. I think we'll see them play a lot more in the preseason than we have in the past. Well, maybe not a lot more, but I think Nick's going to change his approach a little bit. He's not going to put these guys at great risk with a lot of contact and stuff, but they've got to pick up. They've got to get to the starting gate in September with this offense down pat. With Jalen knowing exactly what he's going to do when he has the ball. So I mean, that's what I want to see this summer. I want to see more of the first team. Also like to see him pick up a slot guy. I don't know that.
We were just talking about that. Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, it seems like Howie's content to go with the guys he has, the rookies, and Paris Campbell and John Ross. But I mean, Hunter Renfro's still out there. I mean, I love that guy, and I'd want him.
I'll tell you what, I want to see Britton get a chance. Again, pajamas, hat tip to Bobby King. I love that description in the spring. But the difference between Britton Cubby and all the backup receivers when it came to generating separation, it's like it's not even close.
Yeah.
So at what point, I get it. I mean, they list him at 5'8". He's not. I don't think he's 5'8", and 173. I don't think he's 173, but I mean, the game's changing a little bit. It's become, you see small guys all over, whether it's, give him a chance. I think he'd surprise people.
I mean, I'm totally for that. But he made such great strides last year as a punt returner. I don't want to put too much on his plate. I'd like to see him continue to be a guy that's a threat on punts. So I wouldn't.
Well, there's a bunch of people that want him off the team, Damo, because they want Cooper DeJean returning punts. I'm like, no, I want him to focus on, maybe being the slot corner or some kind of, big nickel safety, whatever they're going to do with Cooper DeJean.
I've never been big on putting a defensive guy back punt returner because, you're basically out on the field previously for 4 downs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You might have run a deep route against a guy, and now you got to go back there and return a punt. Well, you're clearly still, sucking air a little bit. And I mean, I've always preferred if a team could do it, to have an offensive guy.
Dion could do it. Just ask him. Yeah, Dion could do it.
There you go.
But he was a great returner, but that's a great player. So yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather have an offensive guy just in general. I mean, It makes sense to me. Those are the guys who used to have the football. So not that the occasional Isaiah Rodgers, he might be the kickoff returner. We'll see how that shakes out. And he's a defensive back, but there's a few guys, but I'm with you in a general principle. I'm surprised how many people, though, want, and maybe it's Anaya Smith, and want somebody else to take the punt return role because Britton Cubby can't help you elsewhere. And I'm like, he was the best punt returner in football. What are we talking about? Why would you want to go away from that?
Why does anybody care whether he can't help you elsewhere?
That's true.
They're not in charge of figuring out a 46-man game day roster. And the rules are so liberal now with, I mean, you can put, taking people off, putting people on.
I know. It's not as fun, by the way, Damo, in my opinion. Because
Yeah.
I was just talking about the roster. Like, I think Howie pigeonholed himself at receiver by drafting the 2-3 guys. Because they're not going to help you, but he's not cutting them. And I'm talking about Anaya Smith and Johnny Wilson. Yeah. So right there, bang, that's 4. Britton's the punt returner, that's 5. And then you pretty much have to decide between Paris Campbell and John Ross, I would think, as that last guy. They're kind of battling each other, even though if you just did it as a meritocracy, they're probably your 3rd and 4th best receiver.
Yeah.
The practice squad mitigates that because you'll probably get either one on the practice squad if you want them.
Yeah.
And then if they have to play, you can just elevate them.
Yeah. You were mentioning earlier on the show about the depth at wide receiver, and that is a concern. I mean, I don't see the benefits of keeping both Paris Campbell and John Ross, but if something happens to Smith or AJ Brown, you've got other ways you can. You basically would be changing your offense. I mean, because then you would have to really think about going heavy with your tight ends, throwing more to the running backs, which you don't like. So
no, I don't. Yeah,
but
I don't like it with this quarterback. Give me
Yeah.
Phillip Rivers. I like it. I want to dump it to Saquon, 3 times a drive. It depends on who I have. With this quarterback,
he needs to acquire a taste for it.
Yeah. Which I'm not sure you want to acquire a taste for it. But I got to kick it. Like when they signed Devontae Parker, who I got to meet once for a press conference, I'd never seen him play, and I already miss him. I'm like, wow, that would have been nice to have Devontae Parker. That's where we are at wide receiver.
Yeah.
How important is it, Dama, when you have guys like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith as your top 2? Then you have Dallas Goedert. Then you have Saquon Barkley. I mean, admittedly, we all know they're not going to have a huge role in the offense, but how much does having a threat at wide receiver 3 open up the field for everybody else? Or, is it just they got to be able to answer when their name is called on?
I mean, I guess the way Howie and Nick approach it is that, I mean, I'm guessing because of the people they've had at slot over the past few years here, that they just feel that slot can also be tight end, can also be running back, as far as how how a quarterback looks for that guy when AJ Brown and Devontae Smith are covered. I mean, I've always thought having a good slot guy was always important, because that's why I was one of the few guys that was big on Greg
Ward.
Greg Ward, yeah,
because he was a former quarterback. He and every quarterback he played with were always on the same page. He was a great zone buster because he knew where to be. And I was alone on that. I mean, he had one good year, and Nick had no use for him when he got here. But so, I mean, I've always felt that having a slot guy that a quarterback can lean on when teams take away your outside guys is critical. I don't see that guy right now, but then, I think this offense is going to be different. I think we're going to see more from Dallas Goedert this year as a receiver. I think we're going to see more 2-back and throw into those guys. So. I guess that's the way they're approaching it, rather than worrying too much about having a slot guy. And then they're basically figuring, well, we've acquired all this speed at slot in Campbell and Ross. Maybe they hit on that. Howie's always been a guy that thinks speed kills, and
speed does kill.
Yes,
but, you got to be able to
comes surprises everybody and has a hell of a year. I don't know. I don't expect it. But we'll see.
Well, just from a pure talent standpoint, Dama, you're known as the king of 12 personnel to us all. Exactly. I mean, they're better if you want to just put your best players on the field. If you have Dallas as the flex receiver and CJ Uzomah as the inline tight end, if CJ's got anything left, because he was a good player in Cincinnati, that's better. I think he's better than Paris Campbell, John Ross, insert name at wide receiver 3. But they're not going to do that because all these coaches want to spread the field. And if anything, they want 11 personnel and 4 guys, 5 guys. You're going to see a ton of Saquon split out and then maybe rotates back into the backfield, but you're going to see a ton of empty looks, 4 wide receiver looks. But CJ's a better player, so I'd like to see it, but I just don't think they're going to think that way.
Johns, I mean, at least early on this season, I don't think spreading the field is going to be a real good idea. I mean, you're basically going to have 2 people at new positions on the offensive line, a new center. I mean, granted, he's moving over from right guard, but he's still new at center this year, a new right guard. So you got to do one of either 2 things. You play a lot of 12 personnel and have that extra blocker, or you get rid of the ball quicker, which is why I think the running backs are going to be a factor.
Yeah. Damo, we've been doing our training camp previews that John McMullen's been doing on SI.com. We started quarterbacks, running backs. We did tight ends. I want to ask you about Dallas Goedert. How big of a role could he have in this year? I think it's going to be bigger with Kellen Moore. He seems to be an offensive coordinator that likes to spread the ball around a little bit more. I mean, Dallas, his biggest problem has been staying healthy. It's not so much his skill set. But do you see him having a bigger role in the offense this year?
Yeah, I think I do, Xander. It's hard to say somebody's going to have a bigger role when you've got those 2 guys on the outside because the natural thought process is you got to use them. You're paying them a lot of money, you throw them the ball, and that's true. But I think I think Dallas should have a bigger role in this offense, especially on 3rd down. I mean, if you look over his entire career in the NFL, he's never been a guy that Jalen has looked to on 3rd down. The numbers are very, compared to some other, compared to people like Travis Kelce and people like that, his numbers on 3rd down are really lean. And I think that's even though last year they were one of the best 3rd down teams in the league.
Yeah.
I think you could be even stronger if Goedert becomes a weapon on 3rd down.
What is the disconnect with obviously, I mean, it's the collapse. I mean, nobody looked good. The offense didn't look good. The defense obviously didn't look good. But to Nick Sirianni's trademark 30,000-foot view, Damo, you mentioned their 3rd down success. They were better on 3rd down than they were in 2022. They were better on 4th down than they were in 2022. Is it as simple as just take care of the football better? Jalen had 15 interceptions total in 21 and 22. He had 15 last season alone, and then he had 5 fumbles lost, which were a career high. He had 9 fumbles, which has been weird. The last 4 seasons, he's had 9 fumbles, 9 fumbles, 9 fumbles, 9 fumbles. He lost 2, 2, 2, and then 5. Is it as simple as just this offense is really going to be good if they take care of the football because there's so much talent?
I think that's a big part of it, John. I mean, you're right. You look at the numbers last year, even down the stretch in those 7 games when they only averaged 18 points a game, which was, I think in the first 11, they averaged maybe 25. I mean, we're talking about a touchdown difference there. Their 3rd down numbers were good. Their red zone numbers were good. The only horrible number that just jumps out at you is the turnovers. So, yeah, I think that's going to be huge. I think they need to be more successful on early downs with the run game. But I mean, you kind of saw cracks early on last year, even when they were offensively, when they were playing pretty well in those first 11 games and went 10-1. I mean, you could just, there was some uncomfortableness about some of the things they were doing.
Bubble screens.
Yeah. You wondered whether it would catch up with them. It did. But I mean, the defense was a contributing factor too. I mean, they were horrible in those 7 games, and they were suddenly leaving Jalen in the offense with long fields and things like that. So, but yeah, I mean, I look at this offense this year. I mean, I expect Jalen to be better. I look at the weapons he's got. I look at the running backs. Other than injuries playing its, kind of killing them with either the offensive line or somewhere else. This looks like an offense that can put up a lot of points this year.
Yeah, it sure does. Damo, I'm going to ask about one more position on the offense, and that's the right guard. Tough to tell when we haven't seen much, obviously, of a guy like Tyler Steen. But they're in a little. I mean, I trust Jeff Stoutland, but Tyler Steen played tackle at college. It's definitely a different position for him to play. Mekhi Becton's another guy that they're talking about who could play that position. They seem to like him a lot, but also another tackle dominant player. What do you think happens at that position? And to me, it's the weak spot on the offense. Is it the weak spot for you on the offense?
I wouldn't discount Matt Hennessy either if he's healthy. Yeah, I mean, Stout's been pretty successful with moving guys inside or outside. So, but yeah, we don't. We don't know. I mean, he knows better than we do about whether Steen can slide in and play, whether Becton, who's has very limited experience at guard. And is not exactly your stereotypical guard considering his size, whether he could play inside. So it's going to be one of the things to watch this training camp. I mean, it's clearly a position that they've got to get right to protect Jalen. So we'll see. But I mean, right now, I don't think any of us knows the answer to that.
No, throw Max Sharping in there as well. When Max showed up, he's got like 38 NFL starts.
Yeah,
I get the feeling just from that Jeff Stout wants a lot of contingencies, and like somebody will work. You go back to the Super Bowl season. A lot of people forget Isaac Seumalo got benched, and the first guy in was Chance Warmack before they even got the whiz, Stephen Wisniewski. So, I do think they have a bunch of contingencies. So one of them should at least be able to give you competency at that particular position. But I don't know if you saw it, Damo. It was last week, Justin Pugh came out and former played with the Giants, obviously, was a first-round pick back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't playing last season, and he came back to the Giants when they had all the injury issues. Well, he had a chance to sign with the Eagles when they were 7-0, and Cam hurt his foot. I believe that was the foot injury. And they wanted to bring Justin Pugh in to play right guard. And that would have been interesting because he knows how to play.
Yeah.
And, he would have reminded me because they were not happy with Sue Opeta. Sue had a bad game. That's when they put Tyler Steen in, and Tyler was even worse, and they had to go back to Sue Opeta. So, yeah, I think there's some concern at right guard. I wonder what would have happened, too, if Justin would have gotten here and signed here. Would they have went back to Cam Jurgens? Because I'm not sure they like Cam Jurgens at right guard. And that concerns me a little bit now at center. So all this Justin Pugh stuff, which I had not heard, and he said flat out, Eagles wanted to sign him. Now, he's a player. It could be one-sided, but makes some sense to me. And that brings up a little bit of a concern with Cam Jurgens as well.
Yeah. I think Nick's approach, or Howie's approach right now is, okay, we kind of like these guys. We think, I drafted Tyler Steen and, really high. Let's see what they can do this summer. If it becomes evident sometime in August that none of these guys can play right guard, then he'll make a deal, or he'll go get a veteran. So I don't think he's going to panic. I think he figures he's got it. I'd rather have a question mark at right guard.
Well, that's true.
Than I would at left tackle or right tackle. So
yeah, Yeah. That's rich people problems when you're complaining about the right guard.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Defensively though, I've said it all the time. It's kind of they got a lot of it's just unproven all over the place.
Yeah.
I'm pretty high on Bryce Huff. I think he's going to be a good player, but it's unproven. Nolan Smith, unproven. All the young corners, unproven essentially. Devin White, that's another cross your fingers. Hope you can tap into the athleticism and maybe fix the discipline issues. Zach Bond, unproven. Nakobe Dean, unproven. It's like sort of almost Vic will figure it out.
Exactly.
Is Vic going to figure it out?
Well, I think he'll figure it out, but I think some of these guys are going to turn out to be pretty good players. Assuming some guys. I mean, I think Nakobe Dean is going to be a really good player if he can stay healthy, and that's a big if because he hasn't. He didn't last year. You're always worried when a guy has a history of like that now with a foot injury. I'd still like to see them go out bring in Justin Simmons. I mean, this safety isn't a crying need if Reed Blank if you believe.
I think it's their most certain position, safety.
Yeah, I'd still bring him in.
And by the way, it's uncertain because CJ's always hurt.
Yeah,
but I mean, and Reed got hurt, but Reed always gets hurt for one game and then he's back, which is kind of weird. But he's got to figure that out.
You can, safety is so close to linebacker now, as far as a positional likeness that, having one more safety helps you at two positions. And especially when it's a guy like Justin Simmons, who knows Vic's defense so well. It's probably not going to happen.
I'm sure Vic would like him.
Oh, yeah, he'd love it. But, I just think some of these guys are going to pan out. My biggest question.
Don't forget Sydney. They love Sydney, and Sydney's going to be back early in the season.
And I like Sydney. Yeah. He was over. His biggest problem was his aggressiveness. He seemed to act before he thought, and
it's like his hair's on fire. Yeah, sometimes he's outrunning the play.
But I like the kid, and I think he's going to be. He's going to be one of those guys that's going to be a pretty good player. My biggest question defensively right now, John and Xander, is that line. Like you said, it's not that it's not a good line. It's that there's so much uncertainty right now. We don't know. I like Huff too, but he's never been an every down linebacker.
No.
Nolan Smith, what was last year? I mean, was it just a guy that they decided to hold back and wait until he was ready, or is he not going to be a player? What about those tackles? I mean, are they going to play? Are they going to give them a full year? Jordan Davis is glad to hear he's drinking, low sugar.
Cut out the Arizona teas, man. Cut out the donuts. You got to cut those out.
Domo, what's the ceiling for this defense? I mean, I know it's definitely a lesser talented side of the football compared to the offense. Everybody's pretty high on Vic Fangio being the coordinator. What's the ceiling for this defense? With given what they have on the roster.
I don't think there is one. I mean, I don't. I mean, there's a lot of talent there. We just don't know, how quickly some of it's going to develop. The younger guys. I mean, I love the fact that they went out and got two corners early. And just like I've said this many times, it reminds me of 2002. When they got Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown. But Lito Shepherd and Sheldon Brown ended up being terrific players. We don't know about these guys. We think they're going to be good players, and if they are, that's going to set them up for a while. Is Devin White going to become disciplined and play like he did when he went to the Pro Bowl? We'll find out. I have a lot of faith in Vic. I've known him a long time. I think he's going to figure out a solution to making all these pieces work. I don't think, early on, I don't think it's going to be like we're going to say, wow, they're holding everybody to 6 points. But I think you'll see, by the 5th, 6th, 7th game, you're going to see a really good defense.
The thing that impresses me, I probably told you this before, Tomo, about Vic most is just everybody like he creates almost a sense of security. We're talking about insecurity. It's like I compared it to poor Sean Desai last year. Like everything he did, we second guessed everything. You
Right.
put Bradbury in the slot. We're like, what are you doing, dude? What slow down, slow down. And meanwhile, Vic comes in the spring, Damo. In the spring, he's got Quinyon Mitchell playing dime linebacker. I said, if Sean Desai did that, we'd burn the city down. And with Vic, we're like, all right, we'll see how it works.
Keep the faith in Vic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they don't play well early, it'll be like he can't relate to all these young kids. And
yeah, well, that'll be the narrative.
I do think there's an element of ripping the Band-Aid off too with this defense. Like I got asked on another show the other day about should they bring in a veteran corner because everybody talks about how hard it is for communication in this defense. And I'm like, what? And just delay, getting these young guys on the field. So, like to your point, Damo, I think they're going to get good, but I think it's going to take them 6 to 8 weeks at least, maybe longer. And then you come into next year with all of your key players on defense outside of linebackers who are already under contract. And if the more playing time they get this year, the better they're going to be set up, in the future. So I think there's an element to this defense as well, where you got to get the young guys on the field early and often, and it's going to help you now this season and in the long run.
And the best thing for a young defense, Anders, is an offense that scores early.
So true.
We saw that 2 years ago, 2022, when the Eagles just, first half, for second quarter particularly. I mean, second half, it was all, teams playing catch up, and you were just, their line was able to just go after quarterbacks. So if that happens this year, it's going to make life a lot easier for Vic's defense.
Yep, absolutely.
At P Damo, make sure you follow Damo on X, Twitter. I read him at the 33rd team. He'll be gearing up for WBCB with the season coming up. I'm gonna get you ready for the season by getting you in trouble, Damo, because we're gonna do this segment after you're off. So I want you to kick it off. Give me the most overrated player on the Philadelphia Eagles.
Huh, boy. Boy, I'll say AJ Brown.
Whoa,
wow.
Whoa. I did not see that coming.
I did not see that either.
I'm not sure early I agree with my own pick, but I mean, overrated in that he's a year older. We're talking, we've been talking about using Dallas Goedert more. Teams last year found ways at times to take away AJ.
Wow, I like it. You're taking some of the heat off me too. I love it.
Yeah, it's tough to take heat, John, after Damo goes. That wasn't Damo, everybody. That was Damo's like alter ego that's here right now on the show. I don't know if Damo believes that.
I think AJ's the best football player on the Eagles. But I get it from the standpoint of what you're saying. I think what you're saying is
I do too.
Statistically, maybe he takes a step back because people are trying to stop him. They're game planning to stop him. Maybe Kellen Moore wants to spread the football out a little bit more. So all of a sudden, if 1,450 yards becomes 1,200, people start to say, "Oh, what's going on?"
Yeah, right.
What's going on with?
I just have a natural dislike for wide receivers.
Okay, well,
except for Mike Quick.
Is that a PSD for TO? Is that?
Yeah, it really is.
ETS.
I've never gotten over 2005.
Don't blame me. Damo, thanks for joining the show, man. Great as always. You're one of the most knowledgeable guys, obviously a Hall of Fame selector. So very well respected all around the football world. We appreciate you being here every Friday on Birds 365. We'll talk to you next week. All right, Damo?
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care. Have a good weekend.
Yep,
thanks, Damo.
There's Paul Domowitch joining us on Birds 365. Johnny, man,
yeah, I love
not
that.
expecting that.
Love it. I love it. Yeah, I disagree with it, but I love it. But I hear what he's saying because
no, I do too. You're right. I mean, he goes 1,450 and 1,500 back-to-back years. If there's any sort of pull back. You know what I mean? People started
Yeah.
asking the question.
Yeah. Thanks, Domo. No. Yeah.
Took the pressure off a little bit, right, Johnny?
Oh yeah.
You know what's interesting, real quick, before we get to a break? Something you said earlier in the show that I've been thinking about since you said it. And you said it right in your opening monologue, basically. Carson Wentz threw for 4,000 yards with this team, and he didn't even have a receiver break 600 yards.
Nope.
That's I don't know another word to say about that other than that's insane.
It is insane. You know, and that was a lot of people were talking about that yesterday with Ed Kratz about Dallas Goedert. Like people are saying, well, he's got to get up to, you know, Zach Ertz got 100. Well, there's a reason Zach Ertz was the number one option.
Yeah.
And Dallas has never been the number one option. And guess what? If Zach Ertz in the prime of his career was with a prime AJ Brown and a prime Devontae Smith, he would not have been the first option. So he would not have caught 116 or 118 or whatever it was. Just the way it works. But yeah, they struggled for years to find wide receivers. You had a little bit of, you know, Alshon obviously delivered in big spots in the Super Bowl. Was a great receiver, a lot of injuries. Then, you know, sort of the descent in his career. He's never the fastest guy to begin with, but he was a good player. But, you know, Nelson Aguilar never developed as a first round pick. Jalen Reagor never developed as a first round pick. Yeah, it was bad. It was bad at
really
wide
bad.
receiver and that's why there was so much turnover in the Peterson era that we're talking about the coaching. Constant turnover because the wide receivers were always, I don't even know if you can call it underachieving as much as they just didn't have a ton of talent.
Yeah, and I think the guy that year that was the leader, wasn't it Travis Fulgham?
Well, yeah, you had that 4-game stretch of people were so excited. I remember being out in Pittsburgh for the Steelers game with Travis Fulgham, as I like to call it, the Travis Fulgham game. That was in the COVID era, so you know, no fans in the stands, very few fans. He had that weird run, and you know, he was just a poor practice player, evidently, because the coaches couldn't wait to go away from him.
Saquad says Fulgham fever, baby.
Yeah, it was one of the weirdest spikes you're ever going to see, and he did nothing afterwards.
Nothing. I don't even think he's in the league.
He bounced around a bit. I know he was in Green Bay. They brought him back. He was in Green Bay before he came here, but he did nothing after that stretch. It's like an anomaly. Not at the same stage, but I always talk about the Devin White anomaly in the playoffs. He played that 4-week stretch like he was one of the best receivers in football, and then just boom. When he left here, he went to Miami, Denver, Green Bay. Now he's with the BC Lions in the CFL. Travis Fulgham.
An NFL team and a receiver to the CFL that quickly, it can all change very quick. The one thing I would say about that is I do think it's a big credit to Carson Wentz. You know, there's a lot of this fan base has a sour taste in their mouth, and I get it. That, you know, part of it is rightfully so in terms of the way it's soured and the way it looked and all those things. And I understand it, but the more you get removed, I would urge everybody to be grateful for Carson Wentz, because without him, we don't have a Super Bowl right now. And people that will say that that's not true. That is 100% true. We were 11-2 or 10-2, whatever it was, when he went down in LA that year, and we had already secured basically home field advantage through the playoffs. He played like an MVP caliber quarterback, and he was a big reason. So, look, I know the contract didn't pan out, but essentially we paid $132 million of Jeffrey Lurie's money so that we could call ourselves Super Bowl champions. I think.
Yeah, I hope people realize, I've been saying that for years, that you don't have a Super Bowl without Carson Wentz. I hope people realize that. 100%. I think most people do.
I think most people do. I mean, especially our viewers. I think we have smart viewers. I mean, I know they are smart because I read their comments all the time and for 6+ hours a day. I think they know that. I mean, maybe there's some out there that don't, but I think they do know that.
So it was I just pulled up Travis Fulgham, the Pittsburgh game I was talking about. 10 for 152 and a touchdown. And then, his 4-week stretch, that was the only monster game. Then it was 6 for 75, 5 for 73, 6 for 78, 3 touchdowns over that span. He's got 38 career NFL receptions. They all came with the Eagles in that season. He's never had a reception anywhere else. 27 of them came over those 4 weeks. That's it. That was his whole career, was those 4 weeks.
Guy built a career. Did he ever get a contract, a bag? Did he make any money off those 4 games?
No. He was still a very young player, so he's still on his rookie deal. But he bounced around, undrafted guy. But as I said, bunch of teams: Green Bay, Denver, Miami. He bounced around all over the places. Sort of, if you look at the receivers now, the Jacob Harrises of the world, the Austin Watkins, people probably don't even know these names. Shaq Davis,
yeah,
that's what he was. One of those guys on the back end of rosters. Broke in as a 6th-round pick of the Lions. Then he went to the Packers. Then he came to the Eagles, Dolphins, Broncos, back to the Packers. Now CFL.
Travis Fulgham, we thank you for your services here in Philadelphia.
Travis Fulgham.
Let's get the commercial break, Johnny Mac. Oh, by the way, before we do that, I do want to thank James Carver. I didn't want to bring it up because it was during the guest. I try not to interrupt guests with stuff like this. But James, thank you, brother. 50 memberships he gives out to our viewers. So James Carver, we can't thank you enough for your contributions to the show. All your great comments. You're a very smart football mind. Very smart guy. I've talked to James outside of the chat before. Very smart guy, very cool guy, very supportive person. And we appreciate his support here on JAKIB Sports and on Birds 365. Can't thank him enough. So James, thank you for doing that. For anybody that got a membership from James, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a loyal listener of our channel. We can't thank you enough. Johnny Mac, let's get to our commercial break. Coming up on the other side, we are going to talk about a little bit of cornerbacks. I'm going to talk about Isaiah Rodgers with you. It's an interesting setup with him in that I think he's a good player. I don't know what his path really to being on the field is. We'll talk about that. And then we will talk about overrated Eagles players. Damo started us off.
Damo made it easy. He should be on
I got one in my mind.
He should be on WIP for that one.
Yeah, right. That morning show should call up Damo and say, "What the hell?" So we'll do that segment next, and we'll wrap up this week on Birds 365. Just 11 days to go, everybody, until the Eagles report to camp. So good stuff. Stay tuned. Birds 365. We'll be right back.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.